We've got this from the Post-Millennial. Trump considers deploying National Guard to Portland after 80 days of terrorist anti-ICE riots. Quote, these are paid terrorists. If we go to Portland, we're going to wipe them out. It's a bold statement, but there is something interesting in this. Even though they've been ongoing for 80 days, nobody really cares because they're not doing anything. I mean, there was that one video where the local resident, that black woman, was upset, saying they're banging pots and pans. But a bunch of, like a couple dozen leftists banging pots and pans is a local news issue. Mm-hmm. It's not widespread national protests. I'm going to go ahead and say, I think Trump sending an ICE, shutting down USAID, and deploying the National Guard into the LA riots has basically shut the left up. And I don't know, maybe it's the calm before the storm, but it feels like Antifa is gone. Mm-hmm. It's just gone.
And so are the Proud Boys. It's sort of the fear of the whole fear of like domestic terrorism's kind of gone. It's more about illegal immigration and the domestic terrorism that could come from something like that, like an Iranian, sleeper cell or something like that.
I'm not sure does that qualify as domestic if it's someone
That's
from
a good point.
Iran that comes in illegal, or that had come in illegally a couple of years back. I don't know.
Are they funded by Iran? Are they American citizens?
I don't think that counts as domestic. But to your point, I don't know that the everything going on with the Proud Boys has anything to do with the administration. I think the Proud Boys are actually reactionaries. They're a reaction to all the stuff that was going on with Antifa. I mean, Antifa was really out of hand. It wasn't just the Summer of Love. That was kind of like the apex of it. But, they had been going after Ben Shapiro and going after Milo in 2015, 2016. There were people showing up. That was when Punch a Nazi was such a prevalent phrase that you heard on the left. It was like, go out there and make these people stop talking and shut them up. And that was when the conversation about the freedom of speech, like whether it was something that the United States is worth, the United States should be protecting, whether it was worth it or not, because the argument from the left was always, there's all these vulnerable communities and all these poor people are getting harmed by people speaking and sharing these bad thoughts. So I don't think that Antifa is, or I'm sorry, I don't think that the Proud Boys have much to do with it, because like I said, they were a reaction to 6-7 years of Antifa literally going out and causing massive problems all over the country.
One of the things that's important to remember here, and what I think is behind this, is in Ecclesiastes it says, where justice is not speedily executed upon the criminal, there the heart of man is filled to do evil. In other words, deterrence works. Strength works. If Trump says, I'm not going to put up with this nonsense, and we're going to send to the National Guard in Washington, D.C., and the crime rate plummets, people notice, right? And Portland and Seattle, that's out in my neck of the woods. Portland's just a day's drive away. Seattle is just 5 hours away.
Out west, the idea of close is hilarious. Oh, it's close. It's only a day's drive.
Yeah, it's just a day's drive. Yeah,
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
So the blue city governors have been basically making their cities unlivable. Downtown Seattle and particularly downtown Portland are just unlivable. And so, and it's not just Antifa, it's not just the activists, it's also the homeless and just the lack of any kind of societal discipline. And Trump is simply saying, we're not going to put up with it anymore. And surprise, deterrence works. If you don't have the funding from USAID, and bad things are going to happen to you if you start throwing bricks through windows, then look.
I'm curious about you mentioned USAID. What is your opinion about how much USAID had been influencing the protests and all of the things that were going on? Because to be honest with you, and the reason I say this is, like, before Trump, right? Before 2015, 2016, I knew there were people that would protest. I mean, obviously there was the Michael Brown protest in Ferguson and all the riots and that. But I don't think that there was as much pushback on just the right more so broadly, right? Like you didn't see people going after speakers on college campuses. You didn't see people going after, after anyone that was considered conservative. Do you think that the USAID money and influence, do you think that was a major factor in what was going on then? Or do you think that it's just a coincidence that after USAID has been kind of shut down, that the
No, I think it's a major play. I think it has been a major player, funding all kinds of different activism. So sometimes when things were calmer, they would fund AstroTurf protests and that sort of thing, but not violent. But then the violent protests, when something happens and all of a sudden pallets of bricks are dropped off, I mean somebody's funding that. There's a follow. It's a follow the money thing. Always follow the money, and so I think that it was a major player, and you cut the supply line. And one of the principles of war is you cut the supply lines, and I think that's what Trump has done. He's cut the supply line.
Well, I agree with you about harsh cracking down on crime right away. Otherwise, it gets out of hand. And I thought the Summer of Love, they called it, those riots that just kind of got out of control. Yeah. And then 3 days later, no National Guard presence. I'm like, first day I was working with Tim, and I was like, "Where's the National Guard, bro? What the fuck's going on?" And it took a while. And we saw the response to that. But the problem here that I'm having internally is that this doesn't seem like an acute problem. This isn't a riot that needs to be put down. It's not like an acute issue that needs to be stomped down by the National Guard. It's like
what are you,
chronic crime. It's like a forever problem.
What are you
like,
referring
what's
to?
Temporary sending the National Guard to cities other than D.C. D.C. they have jurisdiction, but like it's.
He's talking about the attacks on ICE. The ICE, the ICE agents who are arresting illegals being attacked. So he's not. I don't think he's trying to fix crime generally. He may have been in with D.C.
Oh, so you're saying the intention for sending Marines or National Guard, is it Marines and National Guard? Is that what's being sent?
Yeah, so the Marines that were deployed in L.A., they were only allowed to protect federal buildings. They can't enforce domestic law. So the strategy that Trump has largely employed was by having them there, criminals are scared because if you engage military, they can respond. They can defend themselves. So the idea is basically like, hey, don't mess around while these guys are here.
Did they give an end date for taking the feds out, or is it just like until violence decreases?
I think this is interesting because I think recently there was a stay on the restrictions. Trump is allowed to keep operating the National Guard in California. I think it worked. I think we're dealing with an unprecedented, I shouldn't say unprecedented, but a generational calm, at least in my adult life. I mean, in my teen years, you had obviously the riots and the protests around George W. Bush. With Obama, you got Occupy. Even in Obama's second term, you still had protests and riots. The BLM emerged during Obama's presidency. And then in 2014, escalating into, of course, the Ferguson riots. Then we got Freddie Gray, Baltimore. It never stopped.
Right.
Until this year.
2014 seems to be
this year.
When
it's got to be USAID.
USAID money came into domestic issues was 2014. I'm sure it was like during Vietnam and stuff. They were doing that with whatever organization they were using at the time.
When I was a teenager, it was the '68 Detroit riots. So
it was.
Real quick, let me ask you: how old are you?
72.
So you've seen a lot in the political space,
right?
When I'm a teenager in the 2000s, we had all of the anti-war protests. Mm-hmm. So the moment I'm growing up and I'm starting to see the political stuff. I remember 2000 with the George Bush, Al Gore stuff, but I didn't really pay attention to it.
Right.
I was watching Simpsons reruns on Fox, at 10 o'clock or whatever. And then they'd mention, we're going to, tonight on 11 o'clock news. And I'm like, I don't know. Then I'm like 17, 18, and people are marching in the streets. From this point, there's always been a protest and riot season and activism. Was it like this before the 2000s? Were there periods where nobody was rioting, there was no protest?
Yes, there were periods. There were riot seasons, right? Like in '68, there'd be periodic outbursts. Generally, back then it was racial.
But it was like every summer there was some kind of.
No, not every summer.
Right.
So it'd be there'd be periods of calm, and then there'd be pent up energy, and there'd be.
But you mean like years of calm?
There'd be years of calm. Yeah.
So I guess my point is, in my whole life, we haven't had that until now.
Right.
Which is why I'm like, something feels weird. I went to the Daily Mail today. I was reading the news, and their top story said outbreak of the world's deadliest disease, and I was like, the picture they used was just a picture of a bay. And I was like, okay, this must be the slowest news day in a long time. And it was a report about an increase in tuberculosis, which is kind of serious, but really? That's like a kind of a local story in Maine.
Right.
Even Trump talking about the National Guard in Portland over ICE, this is a really small local protest. And so I was talking to boys about it, I was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, this is like the first summer of my life where there's not been mass riots.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. What's going on? It's got to be USAID.
Yeah, I think so.
Ian, you mentioned like 2014 or whatever. That does coincide with the end of the Smith Modernization Act, which we've talked about. You know, the act that allowed it. The Modernization Act allowed State Department to disseminate basically propaganda to the American people, and that was in I believe it was the 2013 NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act. So I don't know if the USAID money was being, I don't have evidence that it was, but it is a coincidence that at the same, right around the same time that the Smith Modernization Act was signed into law, and then you saw this uptick of all this, essentially, tumult in the United States from the left.
Also keep in mind that the liberal progressive mind didn't flip a switch where it's violent all of a sudden. They have to work themselves up to it. So Thomas Sowell has the subtitle of one of his books is Vision of the Anointed, and the subtitle is Self-Congratulation as the Basis for Social Policy. Liberals, progressives, like to think of themselves as the civilized people in the room, the moral people in the room, the intelligent people in the room. And USAID presented itself as foreign aid for programs overseas. We're going to help We're going to help the children. We're going to build democracy. We're going to do all these things full of sweetness and light. And it became violent by degrees. It's not something you don't go out to save the world, join the Peace Corps, and then overnight you turn into a monster. That has to happen slowly. It has to be a process of corruption and like intellectual self-deception. And I believe that we got to this period of long chain of riots where they talked themselves into believing they really were saving democracy. And it was that famous, the equivalent of that general statement in the Vietnam War, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. The liberals think they've gotten to the point where they believe they have to destroy democracy in order to save it.
I prefer the more contemporary "We Did It, Patrick." For those that aren't familiar, it is this: "We did it, Patrick. We saved the city." And it is SpongeBob and Patrick in a city that's on fire and everything's being destroyed.
Look, no one's fighting anymore.
That's right, exactly.
We did it, Patrick.
I never heard that before about the Vietnam ethos. They were like, was that like a government thing they had to say, or was that just
No, that was a famous quote from a general. They had obliterated a village, and he said, well, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. Oh. And everybody sees on that. And I think that the progressives have gotten to the point where they sincerely believe that if they fight to overturn what the people all voted for, and they voted Trump in, he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. Well, that's obviously anti-democratic because they define democracy as getting their way.
Yeah.
I had a very close friend who didn't like Trump 2018, 2019, it might even be around 2019. And he said, it's okay to use evil to defeat evil. And I was like, doesn't that make you evil? Isn't that the point? Is like you don't use evil. You don't let yourself become that.
Yep.
Right.
And it was just so shocking. He's like one of my best friends for 30 years, for 40 years at that point. And it was so shocking to hear that come out of his mouth.
I don't know if I should just be in a really good mood, because I was saying this like a month or so ago. When I was younger, my attitude was very much people care too much about sports. They would rather watch the baseball game than care about the war and what's going on in this world. And, I'm protesting, I'm angry, and I'm like, you mean to tell me that Barack Obama's blowing up kids and you'd rather watch a football game? And then I realized when everyone started caring more about politics than sports, there's a lot of stupid people who wield power in very dangerous ways. And I'm like,
careful what you wish for.
Yeah, people need to get back to caring about sports.
A lot of people,
because then only a ball is involved.
And they treat politics like sports. A lot of people do. A lot of people, they've called the left and the right, like the teams, like they're two teams. playing for the win. And it's like now we're sitting here on top of the hill that we feel like we've won, and it's like what is winning? It doesn't make it.
It means I'm not worried about going outside and having someone Molotov my car.
Like it's less stressful.
It's amazing.
But there's still serious problems. Like there's still.
But it's significantly less in at least in the United States. And now, granted, if you're going to go ahead and expand the context to the whole world, there's always bad stuff going on somewhere in the world that you can point to and say, oh, things aren't perfect. But in the United States, like the fact that there are not, riots in every city, that we haven't had massive riots, that stuff, even if it doesn't affect us as individuals, it affects a lot of individuals. Like if if you own a business and someone throws a Molotov cocktail through your window, or even just a rock through your window, like that's a huge hassle. It sucks, and that affects a lot of people. You don't want that stuff in your society at all.
I've been, there's a lot of people kind of freaking out because views are way down across the board, across a bunch of different podcasts. Revenue is on the decline. It's summer, ad rates are down. It's kind of normal, but it is an unusually low interest right now. There's very little news to talk about Congress. Even when Congress is in session, there's not a lot going on. Like even the Epstein stuff is like, we get it. You know what I mean? Like they come back from recess and then here we are, discharge petition and all that stuff. And I've actually been a fairly optimistic. We're working on a bunch of projects. We're working on other news projects, talking about mini documentaries. I launched a new channel at Tim Pool where it's kind of just an opportunity to do other content outside of this culture war that we've been entrenched in. And the culture war debate show we're doing is more evergreen political debates. We're actually talking with some networks about doing full seasons and getting funding. And I'm like, man, it's actually a great opportunity for business development. It's new and exciting. And I don't have to worry about far leftists smashing things. And, kind of seems like we at least have 90% of the battlefield at this point. And the left has just totally been washed out. I mean, Cracker Barrel, Bud Light, Target, even Hooters is trying to rebrand to be family friendly now. Did you guys see that story?
No, what happened?
They're getting rid of the... Good.
Yeah. Hooters announced that they're going to do a rebrand to try and be more of a family-friendly location. I'm like, change your name. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.